Welcome to the Building Wealth with No Borders podcast with me, Lamide Elizabeth, where I'll be bringing you guests from around the world to share their strategies on building wealth. And today we are in Dubai with wealth management expert and founder of Wimbledon Wealth, Sophia Bhatti. Did I pronounce that right? Yes. Okay, amazing. Welcome, Sophia. I'd just love for you to kind of introduce yourself. Yeah, let's introduce yourself to the guests.
Thank you so much, and my pleasure to be here with you today. So, yes, I'm a wealth manager. I'm also the founder of Wimbledon Wealth, which is a boutique wealth management company here in the UAE. Beyond the business, I also have, I host a podcast called Sheconomy, which is about women in particular and kind of how they influence the economy and kind of give tips and their stories of how and where they've got to where they have. And that's about it. Aside from that, I'm a tennis fanatic, but that's it.
I love that. What made you decide to become a financial advisor? Like, what was your journey to choosing that career path?
So actually, like most people, I finished university, I graduated, and I thought, I don't quite know what I want to do. I did economics and then I did a master's in finance and investment. So I knew I enjoyed finance, but didn't really know which path and which way. So I started in mortgages and insurance, just took whatever I got. I really enjoyed it, but I felt that it was very, it was quite closed in terms of what I could do. And I wanted to talk about investments and the larger kind of financial implications. And I started thinking about how can I help people with their overall finances. And yeah, I obviously put some applications out and I went to work for a large bank in the UK and became a financial planner. They then got me qualified through their various academies and here I am today. Literally, I've just worked my way through banks and private institutions.
Okay. So even before that, because you studied economics and then finance, before that, what got you into wanting to study economics? Was there anything, was it at school? Was you good at maths? Was it, I don't know, something you saw growing up?
I think I've always had an interest in money, not just kind of making money, but when I started doing economics at A-level, actually, I had, developed a passion in economics and the economy and how money is, transferred in economies and markets, how they work. And I really enjoyed all of that. So I think that was in my mind in terms of that's something I'd love to do. And yeah, I just wanted to find a way later on in life where I could use that knowledge and kind of my passion as a career.
Okay. And what was your relationship with money like growing up?
So my relationship with money, if I'm honest with you, it was an interesting relationship because I did live with my mum, who was a single mum, and a really hardworking mum. So I watched her work very hard and provide for us, for me. And at the time I only had one brother, but yeah, so me and my brothers. It wasn't, she wasn't from a wealthy, she didn't have a lot of wealth. She built her wealth. She bought property. Her focus was on paying off the mortgage as soon as possible. Things like that. From a young age, I used to hear her saying things like that. She opened up ISAs for us when we were young and started putting money away for us when we were very young. So I used to see all of that. And then she bought shares and things. I don't know how. She was not financially literate at all, but she was also always focusing on working hard, but then also saving as well. So that was my experience. And I think, watching her made me want to obviously get out there and work hard as well and see what I can do. Yeah.
I'm so happy to hear that. I think it's always good to hear that, like, it's always good to hear when parents are at least providing like a good financial example, at least in some ways. You might still choose to do things differently, but there is a lot of stories of people who kind of get into finance like I did because their parents were like not good at it at all. So it's kind of like, it's falling on me, but it's good that, you had someone who at least did something that you can kind of leverage off of. So going into the industry of financial advising, that industry is very heavily dominated with white, middle-aged men, at least from other financial advisors that I've spoken to. That's what they would say. How has that impacted your, I don't know, experience in any way, either just wanting to go into the industry or of being a financial advisor?
So I never thought of that before I, started my career. And the first time I experienced it was in a very large private bank in London. And I was only dealing with high net worth clients. And when I walked into the bank, into that department, they were all male, over the age of 40. Bearing in mind, at that time, I was still in my 20s. And the look on their faces when I walked in and I was introduced to the team, I was like, oh my God. And I won't tell you the depth of the experience that I had, but it was an awful experience.
Oh, no.
It was an awful experience, to the point where I wasn't sure whether I wanted to continue in wealth management. But, they did make it very, very difficult. And luckily, I overcame that. And it made me stronger. And I think now I am the person I am due to that experience. But after that, I experienced it in another financial private wealth institution as well. So it was very much out there.
What was it? Was it like microaggressions? Was it like you don't feel like you're included?
Exactly that. Inclusion. It was, if I felt like I needed help, nobody would help.
Right.
Purposefully wouldn't help because they wanted me to fail.
Oh.
It was like that.
Wow.
And, there was sort of a lot of exclusion from certain even social events between them and things like that. So just wanted me to feel uncomfortable. And I think the purpose was to hope for them. They were hoping that I would leave or, they didn't want me there basically. But it was a tough period of time. But I did pick up a lot from that experience, to be honest. And I think you just have to be very resilient. It was unfortunate because it was a great role, but the experience wasn't great.
But what kept you going though? Why didn't you just be like, oh no, this is not an industry for me. Let me go find something else.
I think the passion. I really enjoyed what I was doing. And if I could just shut off the noise around me and focus on actually what I'm doing and the clients I was meeting, it was amazing. But it was just that, external factors that were causing issues. So when I got another opportunity, of course, I did move away from that particular bank. But these things happen, and it is a tough gig. It's not easy. I do think though nowadays things are changing and have changed from what I can see, which is great. And there are more and more women getting into finance and more sort of senior roles, which is really good to see.
Yeah. I think I had because I always get asked this question, given that I work in investment banking, but I don't know. I think so I grew up with 3 brothers, so very male dominated environment. And I would even say, which is a bit rude, but I would say that my mum was quite masculine in some aspects as well, because she was a single mum. And so going into those spaces, I don't necessarily know that I realized all the time that I was one of few. But I would say though, at that point, there were a lot of initiatives happening. So it wasn't, I think even in terms of the hiring, the people who came in, I think we were probably split like 50-50 gender wise, and we had a good mix as well. So I would say I had a pretty positive experience, but I guess that's kind of like, other generations have had to go through a little bit more difficultly. And then kind of that hopefully has changed things for women, especially wanting to go into finance now. But in terms of the clients then, was the clients also mainly men as well? Or were you focused more on women? How did it work?
It was quite mixed. But I mean, to be honest, because of where we were placed in the market, we were only dealing with people with investable assets of a certain amount. They did tend to be men. And most of the time it was okay, but I had a few clients I do feel that thought, not sure, woman and a little bit younger than your usual kind of high net worth wealth manager.
Yeah.
For sure. There were a couple of occasions where I did feel like that. But, overall clients were okay. I think it was more just the industry, the profession, the people around me at that time were not used to it.
Okay. Well, thankfully you pushed through. So now you're here to share some of that knowledge with us. And I really do always enjoy hearing from women who are experts in the financial field, because I think that we have a different outlook on investing and we look at things from a different lens than men do. So it's always really, really good to have female wealth managers on the podcast. And on that, I wanted to ask you a question, which I kind of see a lot in like videos when I'm browsing through YouTube, but I've never really clicked on them per se. So I'd be interested to actually hear what you say. And that is, what are some financial milestones you think that people should have in their 20s versus their 30s versus their 40s versus their 50s and so on?
So I think when we're looking at kind of financial milestones in terms of age, I think in your 20s, the biggest thing for me is just to start putting some money away, and ideally start putting it into some kind of retirement plan, pension, depending on where you are in the world. But that's the point where you should start, and you don't have to put a huge amount away. You can put a small amount away, and just let that, accumulate and compound. It's so important. So I think that's in your 20s. In your 30s, I would say continue doing that. But around that time is when you would usually start looking at potentially putting down deposits for properties, things like typically marriage and, are on the horizon, or you have got married in your 30s. So even things like not just investments, but things like life insurance, things like that is, in terms of overall wealth, is really important to start looking at and getting in place, because again, that gets more expensive as you get older. But it is more kind of then starting to look at, how do we get a property, normally a house to live in, a residential property, these sort of things start coming into play around your 30s. 40s is, I would say, more about, again, it would be things like alternative investments, like an income, looking at different types of income, what other income, passive income, these sort of things come into play around when you're in your 40s. And again, then things like children's education is in your mind, like, they're going to go off to university at some point. We need to start allocating money towards that. So I think those sort of things. Also, when you start hitting your 40s, you can start looking, I think, at as you've accumulated a bit more wealth at that point, is maybe slightly riskier type of investments. Have a go at some of the stuff that you wanted to have a go at. I don't advise on crypto and the like, because I'm not in that space, but that is the time where you would get people putting a little bit of their wealth away into different types of investments, alternative investments like that. And then as you get into your 50s, 60s, it is usually all about trying to allocate money into things that will produce an income, because you're starting to slow down in terms of your career and profession. And you want to get investments that are going to produce income for you to really, keep you above board. And whatever investments you have from accumulating, you'll start to make them into income producing.
I think it's so interesting that you mentioned pension when you said 20s, because one thing I would say most 20-year-olds are not thinking about is a pension, because it's like, why would I care about pensions when most of us would have just started earning our first salary. Like, you want to enjoy, you don't want to think about pensions like that. It seems like ages away. Why is it important to do that in your 20s?
One, time flies by. But two, if you can put a very, very small amount away in your 20s, it's amazing how quick that starts to build up. So by the time you hit your 30s, when you start to think about it a little bit more, and then your 40s, you've already been building. So I know what it's like in your 20s, because it's the last thing you're going to be worried about. And it does seem like it's a lifetime away. But if you can take that advice, because I think even personally, from a personal experience, I feel that I should have started putting money away myself at a younger age. I did, and then I stopped. And then if I had just continued, I probably would have had, a large amount sitting somewhere as a pension as well. But because it's so easily done, and then I've seen people who do it well, and they start putting money away from a young age, and they start building a decent amount. And then people that don't do it so well, and I'm thinking, okay, that's why I think it's really important in your 20s just to allocate a small amount.
It's compounding. Like the power of compounding is massive. And the earlier you start makes a very, 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 very big difference. But I wanted to follow up on something that you said, where you said you wish you had done a little bit more. And especially as a financial advisor, someone who worked in wealth management, why? Because so one of our previous episodes, we had an investment banker as well. She worked in wealth management and investment banking, and she was saying that she also wished she started earlier. And a lot of people were shocked that how do you work in investment banking and you didn't like start investing until later? So what would be your story on that?
So similar to most 20-year-olds, you know, I thought the same. I thought, I've got a long time, you know, retirement is a long way away. I'll do that later on. I wanted to enjoy life. I wanted to buy things that and go on holidays and do the things that, you know, travel around rather than putting money into a pension. But I did start and then I stopped and then I started. So I think it's even worse that way, because I was just thinking, had I just kept that going, it would have been better. But yeah, no, I think it is, you're easily kind of distracted in your 20s. But if you can take this advice, and if you are in your 20s, I would say definitely don't get distracted. Put a small amount away, start.
I hope you guys are enjoying this content. If you are, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. If you're committed to building wealth with no borders and want to invest in a property in the UK or in Dubai, feel free to send an email to lamideelizabeth@gmail.com and I'll be sure to help you. If you're not quite ready to invest yet, check out the affordable video courses down below that will teach you more about property investing and money management. And if you're thinking of relocating to Dubai, setting up your business, breaking into certain industries, getting a visa, check out the Professional Network. The link will be below. Yeah, I think that kind of leads into my next question. So what are the common pitfalls that you see people fall into? Because a lot of people don't end up reaching their financial goals, right? And I'm sure you've had a lot of clients as well. So why do you think that is?
I think, so following on from that, it is lack of consistency, just not keeping it consistent and not planning well enough, in the sense that maybe putting too much away into something that they can't keep up with. So that's a problem. Whereas if you put an amount away, that's comfortable, you can keep that going for the long term. And I think long term is the word as well. Seeing investments for the future as a long term, not as a short term thing where you can keep pulling in and out. And if you're constantly watching your investments, they will dip up and down. There will be volatility. So I think that's a big problem as well, where people try and pull out of investments that they shouldn't. They should let it flow. And I also think the other thing would be lack of diversification. So trying to diversify into different assets is important. Not just investing in stocks and shares, or not just investing in property, but I think people that are quite successful diversify into different assets and and different geographical locations as well, for expats, for example.
I think that one of the things that you mentioned, which I think is actually an important pitfall to mention, on people not being able to be consistent because they go a little bit too extreme to start with. And I think that's one thing that people don't talk about, because we always talk about the people who don't invest, but then there are some people who realize, oh my God, I haven't been investing, so now I'm going to go completely extreme and I'm going to have this budget that is super unrealistic. And then they do that for 2 months, realize that they're miserable and they're not enjoying it. And then they're like, I don't ever want to budget again. I don't want to do this anymore, because when I did try it, it was so uncomfortable that I'm just not going to do that anymore. And that can also lead to a lack of consistency. So I think that is something for, those of you who are listening to remember, that when you are setting financial goals, yes, there are some times where you have to sacrifice certain things. Like if you want to get your first property, you're probably not going to want to be going on super expensive holidays all the time, etc. But when you are setting goals for how much you want to save and invest and stuff, do things that are realistic so that you can actually be consistent with it, because consistency is more important than intensity. If you only do, if you do you save £1,000 1 month and you invest that, and that was a lot, but then for the rest of the month you do zero, someone who is able to do £400 every single month consistently for a year will do far better than you have done. So yeah, I definitely would agree with that. One of the things I also wanted to ask is, I don't know if you have seen this, but has there been any instances where you can kind of see the impact that social media has played into people's ability to achieve their financial goals? And the reason why I say that is, I feel like this is kind of off topic, but on topic, but just with the rise of like influencer culture and also other platforms like TikTok, there is so much consumerism that is being pushed on people, and everything is geared towards buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this. And I can only imagine that it is making it very difficult for people to actually reach their financial goals, because, every time they go on social media, and we spend crazy amounts of social media now, it's basically telling you that you need something, like that you really don't need, but it's telling you that you need something. So I wonder if you see anything like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think especially, now working with expats as well, a lot of expats it's not just the social media is massive, but it's also then keeping up with other people in terms of what they're buying and how their lifestyle is as well. But I think social media definitely has an impact on how people are, or the lack of financial security, because you're right, they're being tempted all the time to buy this and buy that, and, seeing other people with that particular thing that they're buying, and it's very difficult unless you are very, very, strict and you stick to an exact plan. And not everybody can do that. And I think the rising influence of influencers is crazy as well. So you see them, literally all the time selling things to you, pretty much using different platforms. It is a tough time out there for people who really want to build and secure their financial future. And over the years, I have seen definitely a massive difference in terms of, people traditionally wanting to secure things for retirement and, children, to now people just spending like crazy. And, people are earning good money, especially as expats, but they've got nothing to save. And it doesn't make sense sometimes. Like, well, how? It's because there's just overspending. It's crazy just to try and keep up with whatever the latest trend is or whatever. Really.
Yeah, I think I saw on Loving Dubai, maybe yesterday or something, that was it like the stat was like over 50% of residents here spend more than they actually earn on a monthly basis. And it's crazy because, a lot of the push to come to Dubai is that you don't have to pay taxes, so you can save more and invest more and work towards your financial future and your financial freedom or whatever. But actually, like you were saying, a lot of people get caught up in the lifestyle of things. So if you had a client that came to you and that was their situation and they were overspending, what would you say to them? What would be the plan that would be put in place?
So what I do with them is literally we do an audit of their spending, and it sounds crazy, but we actually do. So literally, I will go through all of their statements, their bank statements, together with them. We will check out how much they're spending, what they're spending. Also subscriptions. I know it sounds like a small amount, but you end up subscribing to all these things that you either forget about or, you're not using. They're just there, but they're taking money every month. So when we start doing an audit, we find all these things and we're like, what's that? And they don't even know half the time. So we can cut back on things quite easily straight away by stripping out, all these memberships and subscriptions that they don't need or they don't even know they have in some cases, and then really start to highlight the spending side of things. And do you realize? And sometimes people don't even realize how much they're spending on things. And we literally then strip it down and sit with them and make sure that, that they have a budget in place. Once they get used to that budget, anything surplus, we put away into an investment for them and start, building from there. But it is difficult. And but it's managing, it's being strategic, and it's just a bit of organization, really.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So, I mean, if you're watching this, that's probably something that you could do as well if you realize that you are overspending. Another question I get asked quite often is like, people are trying to strike the balance between investing and saving for their future, but also enjoying the fruits of their hard work, right? I hear a lot of people, my mom actually says quite a lot, like at the end of the day, I'm going to die, so I might as well just spend all my money, right? So for people who are trying to strike that balance, like, okay, I want to invest in stuff, but then I also want to enjoy, I want to go on holiday, I want to do all of these things. What would your advice be to that person?
So when I speak to people, I take that into consideration for their overall financial plan. So what we do is we actually use modeling as a tool. So we use financial cash flow modeling, and we have kind of one of the factors is spending on holiday, spending on that car, whatever it is. That's a goal as well. And every month there is a buffer that we kind of agree on that they can have and spend on whatever they want to do, going out, enjoying life, because ultimately it is going to be part of, especially if you're an expat, you've left your home country, you're not going to go and live in another country and then not enjoy it at all. Of course you will, especially somewhere like here in Dubai, where you can travel quite easily to the rest of the world. A lot of people want to travel. So we do keep that I definitely put that into consideration, even if the client says, no, you will, trust me. So I think it is all about just implementing that into a financial plan. So when you are planning to save X amount or put money down for a property as a deposit, whatever, take that into consideration that you will have money to just enjoy yourself as well.
Yeah.
And you should.
Yeah. It's kind of like what we were saying before. Work it into the financial plan that you have. It doesn't have to be one or the other. I think there are some times, like, for example, I always told myself that before I bought my first designer bag, I'm going to get my first house first. I had that goal. And so that was how I was able to balance it, because a lot of people also feel guilt after they've spent money, knowing that, I could have actually put this money towards, another investment and stuff. But if you have goals that you are working on alongside the things that you want, you will feel a lot better about it. And I think that there's also a part of that plays into like having a scarcity mindset, right? You shouldn't want to squirrel away all your money, because at the end of the day, well, I believe that, money is there to make your life easier. It's there for you to enjoy it. And even when you are putting your money away for the future, it's for the same purpose, right? A lot of people also who don't invest think that, if I'm investing, it's just for me to like not enjoy my money and like I don't even know. It's actually for you in the future to benefit from it as well. So rather than trying to say it's either one or the other, try to work them together. And if you want, set a financial goal first that's reasonable that you can hit, and then maybe after every financial goal, you can then reward yourself with something that you really do want. And then you mentioned expats as well. What are some, obviously we're in Dubai right now, and a lot of people have come from all over the world, right? And they are basically trying to build wealth outside of the borders that they were not born in, even if they're not even necessarily invested. They've either come here for, tax benefits or higher salary, etc. What are some of the challenges someone might face when trying to like build wealth with no borders?
I think one of the things to take into consideration, so there's a lot of opportunities. First of all, there are here in Dubai. First of all, there's a lot of opportunity to invest in property, not just residential. There's a lot of commercial projects, lots of ventures, and lots of startups that you can invest in. So there's ultimately lots of opportunity for investment. And also, of course, if you're coming from a taxed environment, there's a lot of tax efficient investments, which are the traditional investments like, stocks and shares and whatever. So you can take advantage of that. But I think one of the things that I come across a lot is there could be tax to be paid, or if not now, in the future. So you need to take that into consideration. And especially if you feel that you'll be going back into a taxed environment, like back to the UK or the US, wherever you're from.
Can you explain that a bit more? Like, what do you mean by that?
So, ultimately, if you're buying assets now or investing in assets, if you are going to go back into, let's say, for example, the UK, although you've got the asset, when you need to realize the asset in the future, there could be potential tax implications then. And a lot of people don't think of that. So they go, okay, fair enough. But also now, even though you're not living in the UK, if you've got property in the UK, you're still going to pay tax on the property. There's still going to be some element of taxes in terms of inheritance tax, etc. as well. So it's not just that you're here in the UAE, so it's great, I'm not going to have any tax to pay. You need to keep an eye on it. You need to get advice based on your obviously individual circumstances, etc. But yeah, I think in terms of building wealth, if you're earning wealth out here or income out here, you want to make sure that you are investing it in a tax-free environment while you're out here for sure, whether that's offshore investments, whether that's right here in Dubai as well. There are, as I said, plenty of opportunities, to invest. So yeah, I think it's taking advantage of where you are, but just being mindful of your future as well as to where you're going to be.
Yeah, I think that is really good point. And I think if you are someone who's either looking to relocate or you are already like an expat, it's hard because you don't necessarily know what your 5 or 10 year plan is a lot of the time. It's like, I know a lot of people who move to Dubai. I was one of them who was like, I'm only going to be here for a year or two. And then actually you're like, actually, I want to spend a lot of time here. And there are some people who moved who thought this was going to be my final move and then you want to move back to the UK unexpectedly. So it is hard, but you really do have to try as much as possible to factor in your long-term plans into it, because that does complicate certain things. Even in terms of like residency and stuff, some people think that they're no longer a UK resident, but actually there's a certain number of days that you have to spend in either which place to actually determine whether you're no longer a resident or not. And depending on that, you could still be liable to pay taxes in the UK and stuff. So what you really do want is to have a good accountant on your side, tax advisor on your side, financial advisor on your side, because it's actually a lot more complex. And even in my last year of I've been trying to live and navigate 3 countries, it was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. Especially then if I was still trying to do certain things with property in the UK. And then it was like, well, are you a UK resident or not? And if you're not a UK resident, are you going to get an expat mortgage or are you going to do this? So there's actually it's a lot more complicated, I have realized, than what it actually seems. 2 things I want to ask you. One is, the money that your mum put away for you, what has that done for you? Where is it? Have you used it? Did it make a big difference?
Yeah, so I actually bought my first car with that money, which I thought was great. I don't think she was too happy with me. I think she thought, really, after all that? But it was great for me because it was something that I needed at the time, and I always wanted. So I think it wasn't too bad. At least it went to good use. And of course, then that was my car, and then from there I got another one, and she had set me up with something which was nice. But yeah, no, and again, the power of just putting a little bit away. I don't think she put a lot away, to be honest, for all of us, but it all compounded. So by the time we were 18, we had a nice little chunk of money.
Love that. I love that. Okay. And then I wanted to ask you, so there are a lot of people who are like, I don't have that much money. So maybe they only have $1,000 or 5,000. And I speak a lot about property, but property investing in its traditional sense has pretty high barriers to entry, right? So for those people who have a little less, what should be their starting point?
So you can actually start investing in on platforms where you start to look at different types of funds, and ETFs, for example, quite popular. They do pretty well. But I think that would be a good starting point to start to diversify and have a portfolio on a platform where the charges are minimal, and you're just starting to get yourself going. But, that would be point 1, start with something. And you can start with $1,000 or pounds or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So that just get into financial markets.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So we are going to be moving on to the Wealth Voice segment. And this is where one of the listeners send in their dilemma. So I'll just read it to you, and they just basically want your advice on what they should do. If you are listening and you do have a dilemma that you want to send in, the link will be in the description box for you to send it in anonymously. Okay. So I'll read. This person says, I'm keen to start building wealth, but fear I've made it hard for myself. I've taken a job as a location intelligence data analyst with an S&P 100 brand in the Netherlands. It's a great CV boost, but high taxes, nearly 50%. This makes building wealth as a UK expat tough. I'd appreciate any advice. So what do you think this person could do?
So I think the first obvious answer to that is to explore pensions. In particular, I know there's a 30% tax rule that can be explored, which means that you can put away 30% tax-free. Also, I would look at, in certain cases as expats, you have opportunities to invest in investments that are held offshore. So even though she's living in a taxable environment, such as the Netherlands, there are ways in which you can start to invest money and build it in offshore environments. Obviously, it does depend on each individual in terms of what they would like to invest in. The other thing I would suggest is, as I'm not a tax expert, I would definitely liaise with an expert in tax that lives in the Netherlands who really knows the ins and outs of the tax structures to make sure that money is being put away as efficient as possible. Because, unless that person specializes in tax and is in that jurisdiction, it's very difficult for someone like us to advise on that part. The other thing also is to look back at pensions that are in the UK, for example, and investments that are in the UK. So, there's certain limits where you can put money back into your UK pensions, even though you're living abroad. So just make sure that's being done. Make sure that you're reviewing current arrangements that you have to make sure that the investment strategies are really are working. Because sometimes we move abroad, get busy, and forget about what's going on with our investments and pensions back home. So auditing and just making sure that you're making the most of those while you're away is also another thing to look at. And just by way of kind of lifestyle, I would suggest that, just taking a look at what kind of expenditure he or she's doing there, and really trying to see if you can streamline what you're spending on and then putting away any surplus from that as well. Again, when you're an expat, sometimes you go and you start overspending and wanting to do lots of things. So this would be something that I would say as well, just as a side note.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are all really, really, really good bits of advice. And I think also you have to think about, because it's not clear here, like what her long-term goal is. Because, for example, I speak to a lot of people who are in different countries around the world, and they're like, oh, I really want to move to London, but the taxes are high. But I'm like, let's say, for example, this person is living in an African country. If you come to London and you get work experience in London, even if you have to pay really high taxes for 5 years, if you then moved back home, you'd be in a very different financial position just based off the fact that you moved to London. So sometimes it's not just about, okay, how much like tax that I'm just trying to optimize for, how much taxes I can save on, but what is your long-term plan, right? Because even if you did forfeit some, you're paying high taxes for a couple of years to then go back home or go somewhere else and then command a much higher pay, that can still work out really well financially. And I think the good thing about, I don't know too much about the Netherlands, to be honest, but I know that that region of the world is known for having really good benefits as a result of the high taxes, because there are other places in the world where you pay high taxes and you don't really know where the money is going. So, sometimes you just have to count your blessings as well and just say, okay, I'm paying high taxes, but I have all of these things. But then again, with what Sophia was saying, with the money that you do take home, then you have to be extra diligent with it to make sure that you are, like she said, at being as efficient as possible with the money that is that you do, I guess, get to take home. I think that's what I'd say to that. Yeah. Okay, now we're going to be moving on to the quick fire money questions section. So the first question is, what is the best investment you've ever made?
Property, the physical asset, and through funds.
Okay, tell me a little bit more about that.
So first property I bought when I was 22 in London.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Wait, okay. How did you do that? Was that with the funds that your mum put away or?
partly I did save as I started working because I was in mortgages at the beginning. I was doing mortgages for lots of people and I thought, hold on, if they can all do it, I need to make this work. And yeah, I found there was a new development being built, and I actually borrowed some money from my nan and everything for the deposit, I'll be honest, at that time, but it was the best investment that I had made because then from there, I think I sold that. No, I didn't. I remortgaged and bought another one, and it just started from there. So that started the property journey for me.
Yeah. How long did it take for you? When did you remortgage? How many years after owning?
I think it was after about 2 years.
Wow. So you're already able to take the equity out after 2 years. That's amazing. And was it a residential home or was it an investment?
That was what were we doing? No, that was an investment. An investment. And then to buy the residential was when I remortgaged that. So
amazing.
But yeah, that's probably the best investment. And then I did property investment through funds as well, which was really good as well. So.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because maybe even for some of those people who don't have as much, maybe that could be something that...
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So, there's various investments where you are purchasing. It could be a commercial property as well. So big commercial investments in big commercial projects. And you can go in some cases with as little as £10,000 and the returns are really, really good. And you don't have to buy the asset. You're just purchasing the funds. And, it's a shorter term. It's more liquid. And obviously smaller entry barrier than buying a physical property itself. So yeah, definitely.
If someone was interested in that, where would they go searching?
And come speak to me, of course. But yeah, I think those actually do normally, you'd probably have to speak to an advisor because we normally get those. Any advisor really, any good financial advisor will have options for sure.
Okay, that's good. All right, next one. What is the biggest money mistake you've ever made?
I'm gonna have to admit something. The biggest money mistake I made was I bought a brand new sports car, from a showroom, and I knew that it's probably not a good idea. And I'd heard that the minute you drive out of that showroom, it starts to depreciate in value. And I still did it, and it really did depreciate in value. So it was a lovely car. Yeah. I loved it. I enjoyed it. But from a financial point of view, it was a bad mistake.
Tell us, what were the numbers?
So the car itself I bought it brand new for about £50,000 at the time.
Wow, yeah.
No, £60,000 at the time.
Wow, yeah.
And I think by the time, after a year, it was valued at like 40. I'm not joking, 40. And then it started dropping further. And I think after 3 years, it was down to 25,000. I was like, oh my God. So the amount of money that was lost in that car.
Yeah.
Just for that nice car at that time was crazy. So yeah, that was the biggest mistake I've made.
Do you know what? You're not the first guest to cite a car as one of the biggest mistakes that they have made. So if you're watching this, be careful about the cars you're getting. Think long-term about it. What advice would you give? Because I'm not into cars.
I think cars are good. I have bought nice cars after that, don't get me wrong, but don't buy brand new cars from the showroom because they deteriorate a lot quicker than secondhand cars. So if you buy a secondhand sports car, it's a lot better. It won't depreciate as much as a brand new one out of a showroom because they just go down like anything. So don't do that.
That's crazy. Okay. And then the last one is, what is one piece of advice you'd give to someone who is trying to build wealth globally or just build wealth in general?
I think the biggest thing I would say is diversify. Make sure you diversify into different assets because at different points in time, you would require different funds and different, whether it's short-term, long-term. Property is great, but property can be illiquid at times. If you need money quickly, you're not going to get it. So have property. I love property as part of your overall portfolio, but have other types of, have some stocks, have, ETFs, really have different types of investments that are long-term, short-term, and a little bit high risk for the long-term. Why not go for something a bit more crazy? And then for short-term kind of goals, go a little bit cautious. I think just really have a good diversified portfolio.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming, Sophia. Where can they find you if they want to have you as their financial advisor or want to learn more?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram, which is Sophia B Wealth, or wimbledonwealth.com is our website, and you can contact me through there as well.
Amazing. Thank you.